The sun was setting on the alien farm world, painting the sky with strange purple and red colors. Massive machines called harvesters moved across the endless fields, their huge blades spinning and cutting everything in their path. The sound was loud like thunder rolling again and again. Dust filled the air, and the smell of burning crops made breathing heavy. In the middle of all this stood a young alien girl. Her wrists were tied with rough ropes. Her small body looked weak. Her eyes were wide with fear as the metal blades of the harvester grew closer. Every turn of the blade sent a cold shiver through her chest. She tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the machine. Her family was gone. They had left her there on purpose. Some people in her village had whispered about her being cursed. Others said she was dangerous. No one wanted her. So they tied her in front of the machine, letting the harvesters finish what they believed was fate. The girl's legs shook as she struggled against the ropes, but she was too weak to break free. Her throat hurt from crying. The ground beneath her vibrated as the harvester drew closer. It was less than 50 steps away now. She could see her reflection in the sharp spinning metal. Far away, a human worker was finishing his shift. His name was Daniel. He lived on the edge of the settlement, mostly ignored by the aliens who ruled this land. He worked hard every day repairing machines and cleaning the dust-covered fields. Most humans here kept their heads down. It was safer that way. But something caught Daniel's eye. At first he thought it was just another broken machine left in the field, but then he saw the small figure tied to the post. The reflection of the spinning blades flashed in her wide eyes. Daniel froze, his chest tightened. He knew what this was. He had seen it before. Families abandoning their own to the harvesters. He was told never to interfere. The alien overseers punished humans who stepped out of line, but he couldn't look away. The machine was too close. She was too small. His boots pressed into the dry soil as he ran forward. His heart hammered with every step. The noise of the harvester grew louder. His breath felt heavy, dust burning his throat. "Move, Daniel, move!" His mind screamed. The girl saw him. Her lips trembled. Her eyes begged him even though she could not speak. She shook her head in despair, as if telling him it was too late, but Daniel did not stop. He reached her just as the harvester was less than 10 steps away. The ground shook, and the spinning blades whirled like a monster's teeth ready to bite. He grabbed the ropes with his rough hands. The knots were tight, cutting into her skin. He pulled hard, but they wouldn't break. His fingers burned. His nails dug into the rope. The machine's shadow fell over them. The wind from the blades pushed against his back. "Come on!" Daniel shouted to himself. He wrapped the rope around his arm and yanked with all his strength. At the last second, the rope snapped. The girl fell forward into his arms. The harvester roared past, missing them by only a breath. The ground trembled as the machine continued forward, the spinning blades slicing the earth where she had been tied. Daniel dropped to his knees, holding her close. His arms shook from the effort. His ears still rang from the noise. The girl was trembling, her skin pale, her breaths sharp and broken. For a moment she looked up at him with wide eyes, then whispered something in her own alien tongue. Her voice was weak, but her words sounded like both a warning and a secret. Then she fainted, her body limp in his arms. Daniel looked around, his heart pounded. If the overseers saw this, he was finished. Helping her meant breaking the rules. It meant punishment, maybe even death, but how could he leave her? She was just a child left to die by her own family. The harvesters continued moving across the field, their blades flashing in the fading light. The dust covered everything. Daniel lifted the girl in his arms and looked toward the settlement. His mind screamed at him to run back to his quarters, to hide her before anyone noticed. He could feel danger pressing in from all sides. But he also knew this, something about the way she whispered, the strange glow in her eyes for that brief moment. This was not just an ordinary child, and now he had saved her for better or worse. Her fate and his were now tied together. The night was coming fast. The wind carried the sound of machines and distant voices. Somewhere in the darkness, someone would notice she was missing. Someone would come looking. Daniel adjusted his grip and hurried back, each step heavy with fear. Each breath tight in his chest. He had made a choice, and there was no turning back. Behind him, the harvester's blades kept spinning, cutting the fields as if nothing had happened. But in Daniel's arms, the girl was alive, and with her, a secret that could change everything. Daniel hurried through the dusty fields, the alien girl in his arms. Her small body felt light but fragile. Her head rested against his chest, her breath shallow and broken. The night air was sharp, and the endless sound of harvesters rolled across the land like angry waves. Every step made his heart pound harder. He knew he had just broken the rule that kept most humans alive here: never interfere. The alien overseers didn't care if someone lived or died. If he was caught carrying her, they wouldn't ask questions. They would punish him on the spot. He reached the edge of the settlement where his small quarters stood, a simple metal hut patched together with old machine parts. It was nothing special, but it was his only shelter. He pushed the door open and laid the girl gently on the cot. Her wrists were red and bleeding from the ropes, her face pale like the fading moonlight. Daniel poured water from a tin cup and carefully touched it to her lips. She drank weakly, her eyes flickering open for a second. She whispered again in her alien tongue, the same strange words she had spoken before she fainted in the field. He could not understand, but the sound made him uneasy. He sat back, running a hand over his tired face. His mind fought with itself. I should never have touched her, he thought. Now they'll come for me. Yet another voice inside him whispered, if you had left her there, you'd never sleep again. You'd hear her screams every night outside. The settlement buzzed with life. Alien families gathered in their stone houses. Lights glowing through the windows, Daniel could hear laughter, voices, and the heavy steps of the patrol guards. They always searched at night, making sure humans stayed in line. The girl stirred. Her eyes opened wide this time. Glowing faintly in the dim light, Daniel froze. He had never seen eyes like that before. It wasn't just the color. They almost shimmered as if holding some hidden fire. You're safe here, Daniel said softly, though he wasn't sure if she understood his words. He pointed to himself, Daniel, then pointed to her. Asking her name, she blinked, her lips trembling. Then, in a soft and broken voice, she whispered, Aria. Daniel repeated it slowly. Aria. She gave the faintest nod. Her eyes watered, and for a moment, she looked both relieved and afraid. Suddenly, a loud horn echoed through the settlement. Daniel jumped to his feet, his stomach sank. That sound was only used for one reason. Someone important had gone missing. He moved to the small window and peeked out. In the distance. Alien enforcers marched through the streets, their tall armored bodies glowing under the settlement lamps. They carried weapons that hissed with energy. Their voices carried across the air. The cursed child has escaped. She must be found. Daniel's blood ran cold. They were searching already. He closed the window quickly and turned to Aria. She was trembling, pulling the blanket close around her. Her voice cracked as she whispered a few more words he couldn't understand. But he saw the fear in her eyes. She knew they were after her. Daniel crouched beside her. Listen, you have to stay quiet. If they find you here, they'll take you away. And they'll kill me too. Aria nodded weakly. Her hands clutched the blanket so tight her knuckles turned pale. The sound of heavy boots grew closer outside. Shadows passed by his window. Daniel held his breath. His heart hammered in his chest so loud he feared they would hear it. A voice barked outside. Check every hut. Leave no corner unsearched. Daniel's body tensed. He looked around his small home. There was nowhere to hide her. Only broken tools, old machine parts, and a storage box too small for her. The cot was in the open. The door was thin. They would break it down in seconds. His eyes fell on the floor hatch, a small trapdoor he had built years ago to hide his extra food rations. It was narrow and dark, but it might be the only chance. He quickly opened it and motioned to Aria. Inside now, he whispered harshly. Aria hesitated, her eyes wide with fear of the dark hole. But when the boots thudded against his door, she crawled inside. Daniel lowered the hatch just as a fist pounded against the metal door. Open up, human, the enforcer growled. The door rattled under the weight of the knock. Daniel's hands shook. He opened the door slowly, keeping his face calm. What's going on? He asked, trying to sound tired and confused. The enforcer, tall and covered in black armor, leaned close. His glowing eyes scanned the room. A child has escaped her judgment. She is dangerous. Have you seen anything suspicious? Daniel shook his head quickly. No, I've been working all day, came home and slept. Haven't seen anyone. The enforcer sniffed the air. His gaze moved across the room. For a moment, his eyes lingered on the cot. Daniel's stomach twisted. He forced himself to yawn as if nothing was wrong. Finally, the enforcer grunted. If you hide her, you will suffer her fate. Remember that. He turned and left, boots echoing on the dusty ground. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it. His chest rising and falling fast, he knelt and opened the hatch. Arya's glowing eyes peered up at him. She crawled out slowly, shaking. Daniel helped her to the cot. They sat in silence, listening to the fading boots outside. Both of them knew this wasn't over. She was being hunted, and now he was part of it. Daniel rubbed his temples, whispering to himself, "What have I done?" Yet deep inside he knew the answer. He had chosen. He had saved her, and no matter what came next, there was no turning back. The night stretched long and heavy inside Daniel's small hut. The faint sound of patrols still echoed outside, but slowly the settlement grew quiet. Most lights went dark, leaving only the glow of the alien moons above. Daniel sat by the small lamp, his hands blackened with grease from the tools he had nervously played with to pass the time. Across from him, Arya sat curled on the cot, her blanket wrapped tightly around her thin frame. Her glowing eyes flickered now and then, like hidden fire trying to escape. Neither spoke for a long time. But Daniel's thoughts were loud in his head. He had risked everything, for what? A child who wasn't even human. A child her own people had tried to kill. Why? What was so dangerous about her? Finally, he broke the silence. "Why did they leave you there? Why did your family—" His voice trailed off, not sure if she would even understand him. Arya lifted her head, her lips parted. She whispered slowly, searching for words. Her accent was heavy, but Daniel could understand parts of it. "They fear me," she said, her voice cracked. "They call me cursed, but it is not curse." Daniel leaned forward, frowning. "Not a curse? Then what?" Her hands trembled as she pulled the blanket away. On her arm, faint glowing lines pulsed under her skin. They looked like living patterns, not tattoos, but something deeper. Like her blood itself carried light, Daniel's eyes widened. He had seen many strange things in this galaxy, but never something like this. What is that?" Arya looked down, ashamed. "Old power forbidden, my blood. Not normal." She pressed her hand against the glowing marks. "Family. Afraid overseers say destroy before it grows." Daniel sat back, the weight of her words sinking in, so that was it. She wasn't just abandoned because of superstition. She was carrying something the aliens truly feared, a power they didn't want to exist. "You're just a child," Daniel said, his voice low. "How can they be afraid of you?" Her eyes met his, glowing brighter now. "Because they cannot control it," she whispered. Her voice broke with pain. "And what they cannot control, they destroy." Daniel rubbed his face. The danger around him grew heavier with every passing second. If the overseers discovered what she truly was, they wouldn't just punish him. They would erase him completely, wipe his name from every record. Arya's eyes filled with tears. "You should leave me. If they find me here, you die too." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I already made my choice when I cut you free. I'm not leaving you." His voice was steady, but inside his chest fear twisted like a knife. Arya blinked at him, her tears catching the lamplight. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk for me? I am not your kind." Daniel looked at her for a long time, then sighed. "Because no one deserves to die tied in front of a machine. Not you, not anyone. And because I couldn't live with myself if I walked away." For the first time, Arya's lips curved into a small, fragile smile. It was brief, but in that moment Daniel saw not just fear, but hope. Suddenly a sharp noise outside broke the quiet. Daniel's head snapped to the window. He saw moving shadows again. Patrols hadn't ended. They were searching harder now, torches scanning every corner. Daniel's pulse raced. He moved to the window, keeping low. His worst fear came true when he saw two enforcers stop near his hut. They spoke in their guttural language. Pointing at the ground, one of them bent down. Running a clawed hand over the dirt, Daniel realized with horror they were following tracks, the marks left from when he had carried Arya from the field. He turned quickly, whispering, "We need to hide." Now Arya's body tensed. She stood shakily, her glowing marks faint under her skin. Daniel grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the trapdoor. But she resisted, her eyes were wide. "No, they will not stop. They hunt me always. They will never stop." Her voice trembled. But there was strength hidden inside it too. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then we make sure they don't find you tonight." The pounding came at the door again, stronger this time. Daniel shoved Arya down the hatch. She hesitated, then disappeared into the darkness. He pulled the lid shut just as the door burst open. The enforcers stormed inside, their glowing weapons aimed at him. "Human!" one barked. We followed tracks to this place. Where is she? Daniel forced a calm expression, though his heart thundered inside his chest. He shrugged. I told you already, I don't know anything. Maybe the wind covered her trail and you followed the wrong path. The enforcer stepped closer, his face a mask of suspicion. His glowing eyes scanned the room for a terrifying moment. Daniel thought he would open the hatch, but instead, the enforcer grabbed Daniel by the collar and lifted him off the ground. You lie, the alien hissed. If we find her here, your death will be slow. He threw Daniel to the floor. Then, after one last look around, the patrol left, slamming the door behind them. Daniel lay on the ground, gasping for breath. His ribs ached where he had hit the floor. Slowly he lifted the hatch. Arya's glowing eyes peered up at him, full of worry. They are gone, he whispered. Pulling her out, she clung to him for a moment, shaking. The fear in her body was heavy, but the warmth of her small frame reminded him why he couldn't let her go. Daniel stared at the door, his jaw tight. They're hunting you like an animal, Arya. But I won't let them take you. Arya looked up at him, her glowing eyes steady now. Then you carry my burden too, she whispered. Daniel didn't answer, but inside he knew she was right. He had taken her fate into his own hands, and whatever secret she carried in her blood was now his responsibility. The weight of that secret pressed down on him like a storm cloud. A secret that could destroy them both or change everything. Morning came slowly, the first light of the alien sun spreading across the settlement. Daniel had barely slept, his eyes were heavy, but his mind was sharp. Every sound outside made him tense. Every shadow passing his window felt like danger. Arya sat quietly on the cot. Her small hands rested on her knees. The faint glowing lines under her skin were hidden by the blanket. But Daniel knew they were there, he could not forget them. They were the reason she had been abandoned, and the reason the overseers would never stop searching. Daniel stepped to the window and looked out. The settlement was not calm. Enforcers moved through the streets in pairs, their black armor glinting in the sunlight. They carried strange scanning devices, dragging them across the ground. Searching for tracks, Daniel's stomach turned. They were hunting harder than before. He turned to Arya, lowering his voice. They're here again, and this time they won't just look. They'll tear apart every hut if they need to. Arya's eyes widened, she whispered. They know. I live. Her voice shook. They will not rest. Daniel rubbed his forehead, thinking fast. Then we need to stay ahead of them. We can't just sit here and wait. He pulled out a bag from under his cot, a bag he usually used when traveling for work repairs. He began stuffing it with water, dried food, and a small toolkit. Arya tilted her head, confused. We run? Daniel nodded firmly. If we stay, they'll find you. If we move, maybe we can keep ahead of them, at least until I figure out why they fear you so much. Before Arya could answer, heavy knocking thundered on the door. Daniel froze, his pulse spiked. A deep voice shouted, Open! By order of the overseer. Daniel whispered sharply, Quiet! He motioned Arya toward the hatch. She shook her head, fear tightening her face, but she obeyed, slipping down into the dark space below. He pulled the hatch closed just as the door burst open. 3 enforcers stormed in. Their armor hissed with every movement. Glowing eyes scanning the room, Daniel stood with his arms raised, trying to look calm. What now? He asked, his voice dry. I told your men last night I don't know anything. One enforcer stepped forward, a scanning device humming in his hand. The machine beeped once, then again, as he swept it across the floor. The sound stopped directly above the hatch. Daniel's throat tightened, his mind raced. The enforcer knelt, tapping the hatch with his clawed hand. What's below? He demanded. Daniel forced a casual laugh. Storage, just old junk. Want to see? Be my guest. He moved closer, his hands shaking inside but his face calm. He crouched and opened the hatch himself, revealing tools, spare wires, and broken metal parts piled to cover the space. Arya's body hidden deeper in the shadows. The enforcer grunted, suspicious. But after scanning again, the device stayed silent. He closed the hatch roughly and stood. If we find you lying, human, your end will be slow. Daniel clenched his fists at his side, but he nodded quickly. I understand. The enforcers tore through the rest of his hut, throwing aside what little he owned. The cot flipped, water spilled, but they found nothing. Finally, the leader growled, Search the next hut. They left as quickly as they had come. Daniel shut the door and leaned against it. His chest heaving, sweat covered his forehead. He opened the hatch. Arya crawled out, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "They nearly found me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel grabbed her shoulders gently. "That's why we can't stay. They'll keep coming back until nothing is left. We need to leave tonight." Arya looked at him. Fear in her eyes, but also something else. Trust. She gave a small nod. "Then I follow you." Daniel tightened the straps on his bag. His decision was final. The hunters had arrived, and now there was no safety left in the settlement. He looked once more at the door, then back at Arya. "From now on, we move together and we don't stop." Outside, the sound of armored boots echoed through the streets. The hunters spread wider, their voices sharp, their scanners ready. The air carried tension like a storm about to break. Daniel knew the chase had begun, and if they failed even once, neither he nor Arya would live to see another dawn. The settlement was alive with fear that night. Torches lit the streets and enforcers shouted orders. The search had spread beyond Daniel's hut. Now every home, every shadow and every field was being torn apart. Inside his small room, Daniel tied up his bag and handed Arya a small piece of dried food. She ate quietly, her glowing eyes glancing at the door again and again. The weight of silence pressed heavy on both of them. Daniel whispered, "We leave at night, when the harvesters cover our tracks." He pointed toward the endless fields beyond the fences. "They won't expect us to escape through there." Arya nodded, but her hands trembled. She pressed them to her arms as if trying to hold something inside. Daniel noticed. "You're shaking," he said softly. "Are you cold?" Arya shook her head, her eyes lowered. "Not cold. Afraid." She hesitated, then pulled back the sleeve of her dress. The glowing lines on her skin were brighter now, pulsing like living fire beneath her flesh. Daniel's breath caught. The light wasn't weak anymore, it was strong. Alive, like energy waiting to burst. "What's happening to you?" he asked, his voice low. Arya looked ashamed. "When I feel fear, or anger, it grows." She touched the marks carefully. "It is not curse, it is gift of the old ones, but gift, dangerous." Daniel sat down heavily. "So that's why they want you dead." He shook his head. "They're not afraid of a child. They're afraid of this." Arya's lips trembled. "My family. They feared me too. They thought I would bring ruin." Her voice broke into a whisper. "So they chose the blades instead." Daniel clenched his fists, anger twisting inside him. "You're not a curse, Arya. You're a child with something they don't understand. That doesn't make you dangerous, it makes them cowards." Arya looked at him, her glowing eyes wet with tears. For the first time, she believed him. Suddenly, a crash sounded outside. Daniel rushed to the window. Enforcers were moving through the streets again. But this time they weren't just searching. They were dragging humans out of their homes, shouting, "Where is the cursed one? Speak or suffer with her." Daniel's stomach turned. His neighbors were being punished for something they knew nothing about. The aliens were tightening the net. Soon it would close around him. He turned back to Arya. "We have to go now," he whispered. "If we wait, they'll burn this hut down with us inside." Arya stood, pulling the blanket tight around her. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly beneath it. Daniel grabbed his bag, opened the back hatch, and led her into the darkness. They slipped through the narrow alleys. Keeping low, every step was a risk. Every sound made Daniel's heart race. But they made it past the settlement walls, and the endless fields stretched before them under the twin moons. The harvesters moved like giants in the distance, their spinning blades roaring. Daniel guided Arya carefully between the tall crops. The machines were deadly, but their noise covered the sound of footsteps. As they moved deeper into the fields, Arya suddenly stumbled, falling to her knees. Daniel crouched beside her. "What's wrong?" Her eyes glowed brighter than ever. Her skin burned with light. The marks across her arms and neck flared like fire. She gasped, clutching her chest. "It's happening. I cannot stop it." Daniel's eyes widened. "Stop what?" Before she could answer, the air around her crackled. The ground shook slightly and a strange hum filled the field. Crops bent as if bowing to invisible wind. Her body glowed with raw energy. Daniel shielded his eyes. "Arya!" he shouted. She cried out, her voice echoing across the field. And then with a flash, a wave of light spread from her body. The tall crops bent and flattened in a wide circle. Dust and leaves spun into the air. Daniel stared in shock, his mouth dry. You have power." Arya collapsed to the ground, her glow fading. Her breaths were sharp and uneven, she whispered. "This is why they fear me. Because when it grows stronger, I cannot control it. Daniel knelt and lifted her gently. His heart raced, but his voice was steady. Then we'll learn to control it together. You don't have to do this alone. But in the distance, the sound of shouts rose. Enforcers had seen the flash of light. Their scanners screamed as they locked onto the disturbance. Daniel looked at the horizon, his jaw tight. They're coming. He hoisted Arya into his arms and began running deeper into the fields. The noise of the harvesters and the echo of alien hunters chasing them into the night. And for the first time, Daniel realized Arya's hidden power wasn't just dangerous. It was enough to change everything. If only she survived long enough to use it. The night swallowed them as Daniel ran through the endless fields. Arya held close in his arms. Her faint glow flickered against his chest like hidden fire. Behind them, the shouts of enforcers grew louder. Their scanners screamed and their boots thundered against the ground. Daniel's lungs burned, his legs screamed for rest. But he didn't stop. Every step mattered. Every breath was borrowed time. The harvesters roared across the fields, their spinning blades slicing crops like giant monsters with metal teeth. Daniel used their noise to hide, weaving between them, keeping Arya low. Arya stirred weakly, her voice cracked. They come, I know, Daniel panted, his eyes scanning for cover. Ahead, a broken irrigation trench stretched across the field. Daniel slid down into it, the walls hiding them from view. He pressed Arya against the dirt wall and crouched beside her. The enforcers marched past above, their glowing armor lighting the crops. Daniel held his breath. Arya clutched his arm tightly. Her glowing eyes stared at him, fear shining inside them. One enforcer paused, raising a scanner. The device beeped faintly. Daniel's heart froze. If they looked down, they were finished. Arya whispered something, her voice shaky. But Daniel didn't understand. He only saw her glowing marks begin to fade as she pressed her hands tightly against her arms. She was trying to hide her light. The scanner went silent. The enforcer growled and moved on. Daniel exhaled slowly, his body trembling with relief. He looked at Arya. You saved us just now, he whispered. She shook her head. Not saved. Delayed. She was right. The hunters would not stop. The overseers wanted her erased, and they would chase them until nothing was left. Daniel helped her to her feet, and they moved deeper into the trench. The night sky above glittered with alien stars. The air was filled with the smell of oil and dust. The sound of machines and shouts never far. After what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the trench where the ground opened into a wide flat plain. In the distance, Daniel saw the faint outline of an old transport station. Long abandoned, its towers leaned sideways. Rust eating their edges, it wasn't safe, but it was shelter. We go there, Daniel said, pointing. Arya nodded, her small hand gripping his tightly. They crossed the open ground, running low. Every sound behind them felt like death getting closer. Daniel's muscles ached, but the thought of being caught drove him forward. When they finally reached the broken station, Daniel pushed open a rusted door. Inside, the air was stale, but it was dark and quiet. He guided Arya into the shadows and let her rest on a broken bench. Her breathing was sharp, her face pale. The glow in her veins was faint again. She looked fragile, like a candle about to burn out. Daniel knelt in front of her. You're strong, he said softly. Stronger than you think. We just need to keep moving. Arya's eyes filled with tears. I only bring danger, she whispered. Every step they follow, every breath. They come closer. Daniel shook his head firmly. No, Arya, you bring hope. They're afraid of you because you're something they can't control. And maybe that means you're exactly what the galaxy needs. Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed through the station. Daniel whipped around, his heart pounded. A squad of enforcers had found them. Their glowing armor lit the dark like fireflies. Weapons raised, Daniel pulled Arya behind him. His hands shook, but his eyes were steady. He had no weapons, only his tools. He grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground and stood ready. The enforcers laughed, their guttural voices mocking. A human with a stick protecting the cursed one. One of them stepped forward. His weapon humming, Daniel's body trembled, but he planted his feet. You'll have to go through me, he said. His voice was low, but it carried. The enforcers moved closer. Weapons aimed, and then it happened. Arya screamed, her voice echoed like thunder. Her glowing marks blazed to life. The air around her crackled with power. Dust and rust lifted off the ground. Swirling in a storm, the enforcers staggered, their scanners screeching with overload. Daniel turned in shock. Arya stood with her hands raised, energy pouring from her like light from a star. Her small frame shook, but her power spread wide. A wave of force burst from her body, throwing the enforcers back into the walls, their armor sparking, weapons flying from their hands. The room shook with the blast. Daniel shielded his eyes from the light. When it faded, Arya collapsed to her knees. Her glow dimmed. Her chest heaved with exhaustion. The enforcers lay scattered, some unconscious, some struggling to rise. Daniel rushed to Arya and caught her before she fell. Her voice was weak. "I cannot control." Daniel held her close, his voice steady. "You don't have to control it alone, I'll help you." "I swear it." He looked at the broken enforcers, fear mixing with awe inside him. The hunters would rise again, stronger and more would come. But now Daniel knew something. The power inside Arya was real, unstoppable, and maybe the only thing that could change their fate. As he lifted her into his arms, the sound of more enforcers echoed outside. The chase wasn't over, it had only just begun. The old transport station shook as more enforcers closed in. Their heavy boots echoed against the broken walls, their weapons glowing in the dark. Daniel tightened his grip on Arya, who leaned weakly against him. Her glowing veins were faint now, her power drained. They couldn't run anymore. Not like this, Daniel knew it, and the enforcers knew it too. A deep voice boomed from outside, carried by speakers. "Human! You carry the cursed child, give her to us and we will spare your life, defy us and both of you will be erased." Arya trembled in his arms, her voice cracked. "They offer you life, Daniel, take it. Leave me. It is better." Daniel stared at her, his jaw tight. "No," he whispered. "I didn't save you from the blades just to hand you back to them." Her glowing eyes searched his face. "Why? I bring you only danger, you owe me nothing." Daniel shook his head. "I owe you everything, Arya, because saving you reminded me what it means to be human. And if they want you gone, then that's exactly why I can't let them win." The enforcers began smashing through the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Daniel set Arya down gently against the bench and stood tall. His body ached, his hands empty except for the broken pipe he still carried. But his eyes burned with fire. The first enforcer stormed in. Towering over him, Daniel swung the pipe hard, sparks flying as it clashed against armor. The impact did nothing to the alien, but it slowed him for a second, just enough for Daniel to shove him back into the broken wall. Another enforcer charged. Daniel ducked, grabbing a handful of dirt and shoving it into the alien's glowing eyes. The soldier roared, swinging wildly. Daniel barely rolled away, but there were too many. Their glowing weapons lit the room, ready to fire. Daniel stood between them and Arya, his chest heaving, his body trembling but his feet planted firm. One enforcer raised his weapon, his voice a growl. "Step aside, human. You cannot win." Daniel lifted his chin, his voice steady. "Maybe not, but I can make sure you never forget me." The weapon began to charge. Its glow rising, Arya's eyes widened. Tears streamed down her face. "No," she screamed. Her marks blazed bright. The air vibrated with energy again. Daniel turned. "Arya, stop, your body can't take it." But Arya stood, her small frame shaking, her voice strong this time. "You saved me when no one else would. Now I save you." She raised her hands, and the room exploded with light. A wave of raw energy surged out, knocking the enforcers back like leaves in a storm. Their weapons flew from their hands. Their armor cracked and sparked. The entire station trembled, dust and debris falling from the ceiling. Daniel shielded his eyes, shouting her name. "Arya!" The blast faded, leaving silence. Smoke curled in the air. The enforcers lay scattered, some unconscious, others crawling weakly. Too broken to fight, Arya collapsed, her glow fading. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. Her chest rose and fell weakly, her voice a whisper. "They will never stop, Daniel. More will come." Daniel held her close, his voice steady though his heart ached. "Then let them come. We'll face them together." Arya's glowing eyes opened slowly. "You chose death when you could choose life," she whispered. "And why?" Daniel smiled faintly, his face tired but certain. "Because some lives are worth more than survival. And yours is one of them." Tears slipped down Arya's cheeks. Her hand gripped his shirt weakly. "Then I am not cursed, I am chosen." Daniel brushed her hair back gently. "Chosen," he agreed. Outside, the night was quiet for the first time. The patrols had been broken, their voices silenced. The overseers would send more, but for now there was peace. Daniel carried Arya out of the broken station. The stars stretched above them, endless and bright for the first time. Arya did not look afraid. She looked forward. Toward the future. Where do we go? She asked softly. Daniel looked at the horizon, his grip firm. Anywhere they can't touch you. Anywhere we can build something new. She closed her eyes, resting against him. With you, she whispered. Daniel smiled, his steps heavy but full of purpose. With me. The fields stretched wide under the alien moons, and together, a tired human and a glowing child disappeared into the night, carrying with them a secret, powerful enough to change the galaxy.